many competing risks within a company, right? There's reputational risk, financial risk,
Mm.
operational risk. And so as a security practitioner, what you're constantly trying to do is understand how the company is prioritizing that risk and then bring risk management tools to the table to be able to manage this. How can you acquire the data that can measure what success looks like in advance of an event actually happening?
The Forrester research report basically mentions that if someone employs Insider, there is a very significant ROI that they can achieve.
I think
Mhm.
risk gets a really bad reputation. I think when you look it up in the dictionary, everything is doom and gloom. And the reality is risk represents change and change represents opportunity. I like to remind, our customers and our champions that actually the best way to do this is to think about a team approach. And what that means is you can transfer risk, you can exploit it, right? You can avoid it, you can accept it, and you can mitigate. Limiting beliefs are worth challenging on a daily basis, and bringing your whole self into the equation is a necessity.
Hello everyone, welcome to BetterTech. So today we have Beth with us. Hey Beth, how are you today?
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Alright, glad that you made it to BetterTech today. So we will start with a quick introduction. Can you briefly tell a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, your education background, professional journey, and anything you would like to share about who really you are?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, let me start by saying thank you so much for having me. It's not often that you get an opportunity to kind of reflect on your own journey and kind of stand at the beginning, stand at the middle of 20 years behind you and 20 years ahead of you. So I'm really grateful to be here. So a little bit about me, which is probably the hardest part of the podcast, talking through 20 years. I think it's half serendipitous, so chance, and then half choice is probably the best way to explain it. Starting off, foundationally, I started off in the government. I worked in several departments, but the last one was as a program manager for psychologists. I then worked in the defense contracting world and then transitioned through a graduate program at NYU to do financial risk management, and went on to work for a forensic investigative company. It was acquired. As part of the acquisition, I was offered the ability to start my own company. COVID happened, reprioritized life, and as a result, found myself doing more education, more consulting, and very happy to find a home at Code 42.
Awesome. So right now, if I talk about your current role, you are a field CISO, right? There is a CISO and there is a field CISO. How do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, great question. I'm totally biased. I think I have the best job in the company. So what makes my job so unique is the ability to kind of dabble across projects. And when I say that, I mean I get the opportunity to be both internal facing and external facing. So I work with prospects to help them understand risk management from a people, process, and tech perspective. And then I consult internal with our company across marketing and sales, and even product management.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So since you have like a global sort of security exposure, I would say, and you have worked in leadership roles as well, and you have been advocating a proactive security culture too. So how would you say that what are some of the common components in this overall mix? I mean, how would you rate them? Why they are important?
So interesting. So I think culture, the way that security talks about culture, it's almost like an afterthought. I happen to believe that there are two types of people, right? There are people who read instruction manuals and people who don't, and they're normally married. The people who don't read instruction manuals are also the ones who deprioritize culture. Me, I was guilty, right? You go straight into identifying, responding, the whole cycle of deterring. And what you realize is that the actual gatekeeper to identifying or preventing an event, a negative event in particular, is the culture aspect of it. If I can digress a little bit, this foundational belief actually evolved in my my last job within the government. So I managed a team of psychologists, and we oversaw things like screening and selection for special mission units, so Green Berets.
Mm-hmm.
We oversaw hostage negotiations, and then we oversaw
Mm-hmm.
mental health. And in the mental health component, there was preventative kind of suicide efforts. What
Okay.
we found, and what was really enlightening, again, at an early age and informative as part of my approach to risk management, was that only when a suicide happened did you get the attention or the budget that was required to do something about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of guiding principle of how can you acquire the data that can measure what success looks like in advance of an event actually happening has been a driving factor.
So it's been like you can say more of a proactive approach rather than a reactive one.
Yes, so 100%. Yes, and I would take it one step further, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of an approach that I think about reframing risk. So I think
Mm-hmm.
risk gets a really bad reputation. I think when you look it up in the dictionary, everything is doom and gloom. And the reality is risk represents change, and change represents opportunity, right? And so being able to look across risk in a reframing approach has been really beneficial, both for our existing customers and then projects I've been associated with in the past. Um,
Sure.
if I can just also, what reframing risk does, in addition to creating a proactive culture, is it creates a common language. And that
Sure.
common language gives you, whether it's an organization or an individual, the opportunity to communicate the values which influence the culture across the organization. So, just
Mm-hmm.
one more way of thinking about it is that there are many competing risks within a company, right? There's reputational risk, financial risk,
Mm-hmm.
operational risk, right? And so, as a security practitioner, what you're constantly trying to do is understand how the company is prioritizing that risk, and then bring risk management tools to the table to be able to manage this.
Sure. I mean, it certainly is a complex topic. I mean, it depends on how, from which lens you basically see it. But overall, I mean, do you think that training can play an important role in making
100%.
people more aware about risk management in general? And
Yeah.
with your consulting group, how you are tackling this?
Yeah, so I would say that there's a couple of different ways to do it. At Code 42, we have a tool that's called Insider. But part of our tool is also a separate tool, which is called Instructor. And what
Mm-hmm.
Instructor allows for is proactive and also reactive micro training. And so, what you can do is you can baseline the behavior that you find acceptable within your organization, particularly in this case
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to data movement. And then you can train in the moment when an event occurs, right? So, an
Mm-hmm.
example of that would be, there's an acceptable use policy that says we are a OneDrive shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you
Mm-hmm.
find that documents are being uploaded to Box, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know that
Okay.
that's an opportunity for risk, and we know as a security professional, we may not have all the puzzle pieces to say whether or not that is an anomalous event or whether it
Mm-hmm.
has previously been approved or whether that's being requested from a customer, right? So being able to identify that activity in real time and then be able to ask the question, did you mean to do this? Yes or no, right? Which then helps with kind of the auditing trail aspect of it. If yes, what's your justification? If no, hey, this is actually the way that we do things, per our acceptable use, and the training that we've provided. Please go ahead and take these remediation steps and watch this video, etc.
So, I mean, you touched upon your product, which is Insider. Now, when I
Yeah.
looked it up, it basically has a very unique sort of spelling. It's
Yes.
INCYDR, right? So
Yes.
it looks like something that is different. So, how
Yeah.
it was named and why it was named like that?
I think you just nailed it. It was meant to be something different, something memorable, and kind of a new way of approaching data loss prevention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it from holistic perspective, looking at culture as a driving force. I know I'm taking this way off course from what you answered. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Quirky, unique, memorable. Yes.
Right. So, can you tell like in summary, a case study where this tool actually helped in practical world?
Absolutely. So let me think of two examples real quickly. The first one would be, again, totally biased, but I think the best part of our tool is the data visibility aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I talk about it for both our customers and our prospects is that it's like switching on the lights, right? So all of a sudden you have visibility into where your data is moving from an end user to a file to a destination, and you can get very granular. Right? But then you can also pull back and you can see the larger trends that are taking place, right? And then you can correlate those trends with industry standards. You can benchmark across business cycles, employee life cycles, security life cycles,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to answer your question more specifically, what we've been very successful at recently is helping companies who are going through internal reduction. Layoffs,
Okay.
particularly tech companies, and being able to identify what baseline normal looks like and identify outliers. So outlying behavior could come from a multitude of different ways, whether it's malicious or non-malicious, accidental, etc. But if you think about it, there's a lot of disgruntlement that occurs, which can lead towards malicious behavior. And then there's a lot of apathy or disengagement, which can lead towards neglect. So what you're trying to do is look at that 80% solution of what is the normal behavior, so the cultural drift that's happening, and then how can you put guardrails around that through training and education. So we've been employed recently to do that, kind of a reset within a company to say, are we in alignment with our culture? What do our policies say about our culture? Are they reflective? And then how are we augmenting the technology within our existing tech stack to reinforce the culture? Let me
All
pause there
right.
and say, answer your question.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, these are all practical use cases where such a tool can be utilized. But what I was reading was that the Forrester research report basically mentions that if someone employs Insider, there is a very significant ROI that they can achieve. Can you sort of suggest, I mean, what could be some of the factors on the basis of which they have based their report on and how other companies can get benefit out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest way to say is it's a time savings. You can do more with less, right? So it gives you the ability to have a snapshot and say, okay, if these are all my vectors of risk, what do I care about the most, right? And so that ROI is from a business ROI. A lot of times what I'll do is I will sit down with existing customers and say, what does success look like in your environment, right? Less man hours, more integration with your existing tool stack. So it's tipping and queuing. It's giving you the right true positives that you're looking for. It is assigning accountability. Who owns what. All of that can be very big time savings when you're talking about streamlining a people, process, and tech approach. Let me also just take it one step further and say, I think security professionals. So again, the ROI was focused on practitioners who are using this tool, being able to communicate, so champion the change within our ecosystem, right? I think also a lot of times as security professionals, what we tend to do is want to solve the problem. So from a risk management standpoint, you're thinking purely about mitigating risk every time, when actually there's a couple other levers that you have. So I like to remind, our customers and our champions that actually the best way to do this is to think about a team approach. And what that means is you can transfer risk, you can exploit it, right? You can avoid it, you can accept it, and you can mitigate it. And sometimes it's only going to mitigation. You're going to burn out, your people process tech in a way that's going to, have a point of diminishing return. Let me pause there and say, did I answer your question?
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying is that the normal reaction is basically at the very last steps, but ideally it should be the journey through which you have actually reached the last one, correct?
Love it. And so this just gave me goosebumps because this is exactly where I live, right? It's okay, well, what can I do about it? And if we go back to the beginning of this conversation where we're talking about culture, we're talking about the importance of communication. And I would say with communication, it's also curiosity, right? What are the minimum viable variables that I need to orient myself to? after you understand the values and cultures within an organization, right? After you've read the
Mm,
manual, right, instead of throwing it away, then where do I start to have this conversation and build this common language, right? And I think that there's four variables that that you can bucket to begin answering the question, where do I start? Right? Because I think that's sometimes the hardest part about change or risk management is knowing where to
mm-hmm.
start. So if you think about, look, there's no way around it. This is going to be a hard conversation. It's going to be a hard conversation, internally with your team, externally with your stakeholders, even
Mm-hmm.
beyond that with your vendors and with your, in some cases, your shareholders, right? But the four areas that you can start at to chip away, I like to refer to as lighter. So a lighter model. So it's still going to be hard, but you can make it feel lighter instead of heavy. You can focus on location, identity, time frame, and relationship. And what you can begin to do is appreciate, how does an HR professional think about location? How does finance think about
Mm-hmm.
location? Right? So when you're trying to tackle the operational risk, the financial risk, the legal risk, the reputational risk, how can you bucket those in areas that the company can move towards or away from, right, with a team risk management approach? And I think
Sure.
that begins to change the mindset and reframe the level of risk so that people are thinking more collaboratively and communicating in a language beyond, the silo of their particular skill set.
Sure. And also, I mean, just a bit off topic, but with the introduction of AI, machine learning, Gen AI, all these things, and I mean, the data being shared for being used in these models, etc. So, data security, I mean, is now at the forefront as well because people are really talking where the data is going, how it is being utilized, how it's used. I mean, is there a permission that these companies are taking? I mean, and it all revolves around data security and privacy. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. So I love that you asked this question because I know in security, when generative AI comes up, a lot of my colleagues, cringe. And in fact, I was on a panel, I don't know, a year ago, this came up, and all of them rolled their eyes and visibly sighed, right? Like, oh, we're talking about generative AI. But I get so excited because to me, it's like the Mary Poppins moment of our industry, right? It's the sugar that's going to help the medicine go down. Yes,
Mhm.
generative AI is it's a growing concern. It's not going to go away. The rate of acceleration is just mind-blowing, and we
Mhm.
can talk about that in a second, right? But the fundamentals of the cyber hygiene and the way you do communication and the way you iterate on risk posture, that's not going to change. So if this becomes the way in which I can get HR to have a risk management or a security posture
Mm,
conversation, let's do it, right? Legal, finance, etc. So I think it's a fabulous opportunity to take all of the best practices, whether we're talking governance, privacy, right, and roll it into this topic that everyone seems to be interested in, and isn't going away.
yeah. So towards the end, really many people these days are actually opting for security as their, I mean, career objective or their professional, you can say, journey where they will begin with or their career, to be precise. So what sort of message that you would like to give them, and what are some things they should consider? What should be the area of focus? Is it of value? How do you see it growing?
Oh my gosh. Yes, of course. We need you, full stop, right? I think what's helpful is, again, being very clear about your personal values, because you bring that into whatever organization, and that will either complement or clash with the culture, in the
Mm-hmm.
organization you're joining. So my personal values are around courage, creativity, and community, right? And so I think if we go back to the beginning, I think being able to be courageous about serendipitous opportunities becomes really important. I
Mm-hmm.
think, limiting beliefs are worth challenging on a daily basis. And bringing your whole self into the equation is a necessity. I mean, we talk a lot about my professional journey, but I would say that being a wife and a mom has influenced, my thinking, probably more than any title or job I've ever had. And so, that desire to want to take these lessons and ensure that the next generation, be it the next generation of workforce or the ones that are coming behind us, understand the significance of security and the language of risk has motivated me significantly.
Right. Yeah. So with this last question, I will end this conversation. And once again, I would really like to thank you for taking out the time and talking to us about this new topic, as well as I look forward to hosting you in the exciting topic really soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just wanted to say also thank you so much for the opportunity, and to the community, both past and current and future, that will be a part of this journey.
Thank you so much, Beth. Looking forward. Have a
Thank you
good
so
one.
much.